So what is Mortal Online 2, and why would I say it's one of the most underrated MMOs currently in development at this moment? Um, so Mortal Online 2 is obviously the sequel to the original Mortal Online. It's a full loot sandbox PvP game um, that has very skill-based, forced first-person combat. And I realize that it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but for the people who really love that type of thing, it's absolutely great. You can kind of see in the combat that I'm doing. If you look at the middle of the screen where my cursor is and you see those arrows, when I swing or hold a swing or I go to block, if I have the arrow facing left, I'll block to the left or swing from the left. If it's going right, same thing. If it's the top, I'll do an overhead, and the bottom, I'll do a stab. So like learning to master the timing on that, you can see in this video. Of course, I'm not very good since I just started this game today. Um, but it's something that Lysandra, who's been playing for a couple months, has definitely gotten more of a hang of, and you can see just how good you can get if you practice at this game. So beyond just the melee combat, there's also archery that you'll see later in the video, and then there is a magic system that's not yet implemented. There's a taming system that's not yet implemented, and there should be more schools of magic like necromancy and stuff that give you other options on how to fight as well. So if directional combat and melee isn't your thing, there's other things as well. Oh, as well as the fact that every single type of combat can be done from the back of a mount fairly effectively. So it's just really, there's a lot of options in combat. It's very realistic. It's very immersive. But the original one had basically all the features that I'm discussing right now. It's just that the original had problems, racial balance, the fact that you needed to re-roll if you rolled certain races because they're not viable, a myriad of bugs and things like that. And really what Mortal Online 2 is about is taking the elements of the game that were great in the original, keeping those, and then dealing with the issues that people found to be problems and trying to make the game. They said they're trying to make it without alienating their core audience and keeping the things that the core audience love. They're trying to make the game appeal to a broader audience at the same time. Not necessarily break out of the niche genre entirely, but have a much, much broader audience within being a niche sandbox PvP MMO. And so I think that's going to be absolutely great. And then in the original, there were actually consequences. When I say full loot PvP, you can kill anyone, anywhere, anytime, any reason. Of course, there's guards in certain areas that will probably kill you if you do that. And then there's also consequences in the first game for just running around killing everyone. But they're pretty light consequences, and a lot of people just chose to ignore them. And I know that they're going to be trying to address that system as well in the second version to make it more palatable to the average player. So that's something that will probably be happening. And then the last topic that I'd like to get on to is the crafting system. So beyond the combat, one of the elements that's best about Mortal Online, in my opinion, is the crafting system. The crafting system is just absolutely way more detailed than you would expect to find in practically any other MMO. As you can see in what I'm doing, there's a lot of different hilt types and blade types that I can select to create this one-handed sword that I'm trying to make. And so I can have all these different options for one-handed sword, and I can combine any of these hilt types with any of these blade types. But then that doesn't really get to the depth of how complex this crafting system is, because then you can see in the bottom that it allows me to select from the 3 different material types for the different components. There's the hilt core, the hilt wrapping or the grip material, and the head material. And so in the first sword, I just create an all tungsten sword to make this heavy, maximum damage potential sword. But there's no not there's downsides to doing that. Yes, I'm going to make the highest damage sword by just going all tungsteel, which is probably the best metal in the game. Um, but the issue is that when I swing that sword, since it's heavier, it's going to drain more of my stamina. Since it's heavier, it's going to swing actually slower. There's a longer swing time for a heavier weapon. Um, and so and it requires a higher strength rating. If you're a lower strength character, you couldn't even wield that sword because it requires so much strength just to swing that thing around. So, in the second sword, you can see that I use wood as the core and then silk as the grip. And what I'm doing there is I'm trying to shave off a little bit of weight off of the weapon. And yeah, that's going to lower the damage, but it's going to increase the swing timer, decrease the stamina, etc. So there's trade-offs, and there's reasons why for different characters and different intended builds you would go with different versions of these swords. Um, and I just think that that's really interesting. And you see that kind of thing replayed with armor. You see it replayed with shields. There's a lot of different items in the game that same system works. But then there's also other types of crafting. There's going to be a taming system, as I mentioned, in this game. And in the original game, at least, the taming system was incredibly complex. You would have, for instance, like 5 different versions of horses. There was like desert horses, bull horses, steppe horses, jungle horses, and they would each have different traits. For instance, the desert horse is a very fast horse, and the bull horse is a very sturdy horse that has good stamina and can take a lot of hits. And so say you want a horse that's both fast and has good stamina and can take a lot of hits. Well, then you would try to breed a desert horse with a bull horse, and if the right traits lined up, you might get a version of that horse that's better than either of the parent races. And there's a lot of things like that. There's alchemy, where there's like hundreds of different ingredients scattered out throughout different parts of the map. Certain ingredients only come from certain parts of the map, and you can refine them in different ways, and you can combine different ingredients, and there's so many potential combinations, and there's potions that you can unlock if you find the right combination. You might create a potion that nobody else has ever used before. And the original Mortal Online, I believe there's still some undiscovered potion recipes out there because there are just thousands of possible combinations, so not everybody discovered everything. And it's just that level of depth that, in my opinion, really sets this game apart.